In today's episode, we're unpacking the picnic baskets, tying on wide-brimmed hats, and stepping into the sparkling summer calendar of Britain's elite. As American women married into the British aristocracy, they soon learned that summer was not for rest. It was for visibility. Unlike those who married American heirs or business and stayed in America, the Gilded Heiresses, who made their lives across the Atlantic, were expected to participate in the politics of Britain's elite. After the glamour and strategy of the London season came an equally important stretch of social appearances. These took place at regattas, race courses, garden parties, and country house weekends that filled the months of June, July, and August. It was a period as demanding as it was dazzling. So what exactly did a Gildes heiress do in the summer months? What events defined the social calendar beyond the ballroom? And how did these long golden days play a crucial role in securing and displaying aristocratic status? Let's begin. Once the final curtsy of the season had been performed in a London ballroom, attention turned outward. Heiresses could be found in the green spaces, riverbanks, and racetracks of England. This next chapter of the social calendar was unofficial, but no less crucial. Among the first of these grand summer events was Royal Ascot, the most prestigious racing event in the British calendar. Founded in the early 1700s and held annually in June, Ascot was ostensibly about horses, but everyone knew it was a showcase for fashion, rank, and reputation. Attendance at Ascot, particularly in the royal enclosure, was carefully controlled. American-born women who married into the aristocracy were expected to uphold British standards of decorum and dress with precision. Women wore skirts well below the knee, sleeves that covered the shoulder, and, most importantly, elaborate hats. A striking hat was not just acceptable, it was expected. One didn't simply attend Ascot, one made a statement. The paddocks and champagne tents served as informal stages, where fashion met diplomacy, and marriages might be discussed as eagerly as the odds on the next race. Shortly after Ascot came the Henley Royal Regatta, held on the River Thames in Oxfordshire. Established in 1839, Henley attracted both rowers and spectators from across Britain and beyond. What began as a one-day amateur sporting event had, by the Gilded Age, become a 5-day social institution. Families arrived in their own launches, which were sleek riverboats often staffed with uniformed oarsmen, and they moored along the regatta course to enjoy the races from the water. Those who remained on land gathered in striped marquees, sipping champagne and watching the spectacle from carefully laid picnic tables. It was a stage set with white dresses, parasols, polished shoes, and murmured introductions. Both Ascot and Henley were more than enjoyment. They were tests. How well one dressed, conversed, and circulated could determine one's social standing for the rest of the year. A well-placed conversation between races could yield a marriage proposal, a political alliance, or an invitation to a particularly coveted house party. For a newly titled American woman, these summer events were opportunities to solidify her place and her influence among Britain's most established families. Beyond the marquee events of Ascot and Henley, the true social engine of summer was the house weekend. From late June through August, aristocratic families took to their country estates and began hosting a steady rotation of guests. The invitations were selective, the logistics elaborate, and the expectations, especially for the hostess, immense. Guests typically arrived on Friday afternoon, often by private train carriage or motor car, and were met at the station by the estate's grooms or liveried footmen. Upon arrival, they were shown to their rooms, each of which was meticulously prepared with fresh flowers, handwritten itineraries, and, if needed, specially selected wardrobe accessories. Mornings were devoted to activities that reflected the character of the estate and the season. Shooting parties might be arranged for those staying at Highland estates, while southern homes offered riding through the countryside or early games of tennis. After lunch, the tempo relaxed. Guests might walk through ornamental gardens, row on the estate lake, or play croquet on the lawn. These moments, while seemingly idle, were key to social maneuvering. The right pairing during a game or a stroll could spark a courtship or dissolve a rumor. One of the most fashionable entertainments was polo. Introduced to England in the 1860s and rapidly adopted by the upper classes, polo was played at country clubs and estates alike. Matches were scheduled in the afternoon when the heat had softened, and guests gathered on the edge of the field to cheer, chat, and fan themselves beneath wide-brimmed hats. It was both elegant and theatrical. Young men demonstrated their prowess on horseback, while women posed at the sidelines, dressed in crisp cottons or pastel silks. For a hostess, organizing a successful polo match meant balancing sport with pageantry and ensuring that no one's eagle or ankle was too badly bruised. Evenings brought formal dinners, which required new gowns each night. Seating charts were agonized over to ensure no social faux pas. After dinner, guests might enjoy dancing in the drawing room, or amateur theatricals in a converted orangery, and even parlor games that ranged from charades to rather scandalous versions of Truth or Dare. Behind every seamless weekend was a woman who had managed it all, from the menu to the stables, from the floral arrangements to the guest list. For America's heiresses, this was where their real work began. It was here, in the country, that they proved they could not only marry a title, but uphold everything it required. If house weekends were for intimacy and influence, garden parties were for spectacle. Held at aristocratic estates, city townhouses, and even royal residences like Buckingham Palace, garden parties became a signature of the late Victorian and Edwardian social world. Invitations to the most prestigious of these, such as Queen Victoria's or later Queen Alexandra's garden parties, were tightly controlled and often signaled royal approval. For most peeresses, including those from across the Atlantic, hosting or attending a garden party was both a pleasure and a performance. These afternoon affairs typically began around 4 o'clock. Guests arrived dressed in pale summer gowns, gloves, and decorative hats. Men wore morning coats or summer suits with straw boaters. Music was provided by small ensembles or military bands tucked away in pavilions. Tea was served on fine china, accompanied by delicate sandwiches and seasonal fruit tarts. But while the refreshments were light, the expectations were heavy. Conversation had to be sharp but not showy, fashionable without seeming vulgar. A garden party was the ideal venue for a new peeress to present herself as not only beautiful, but gracious, informed, and well-connected. It was a platform for charitable involvement. Many American-born women, having grown up with a culture of philanthropy, hosted garden parties to raise funds for hospitals, schools, or poor relief. This allowed them to reinforce their public image as a generous and progressive, while also engaging the local elite in causes that suited their image. Fashion naturally played a starring role. The summer garden party was where one debuted new couture, which were often commissioned by Paris or London months in advance. Embroidered muslin, chiffon overlays, floral applique, and lace parasols all helped create a dreamy, feminine tableau. And with society photographers increasingly present, every detail was a potential headline. At last, when the events were winding down, the most privileged families turned to the next summer ritual: getting away. Some sought solace in the Scottish Highlands, retreating to family lodges or grand castles near moors, lochs, and pine forests. Here, the heiress traded her garden party gown for practical tweeds and riding boots. The air was bracing, and the schedule was rugged. Days were spent fishing, shooting, or walking across the heathered hills. Evenings were cozy, often lit by candlelight and accompanied by storytelling or music. It was a return to nature, but still heavily structured by class and ritual. Others opted for the British seaside. Towns like Brighton, Eastbourne, and Scarborough welcomed elite guests in the summer season. Families rented houses or suites in seaside hotels, complete with drawing rooms overlooking the promenade. Activities included sea bathing, which was conducted from modest bathing machines, of course, as well as donkey rides, pleasure gardens, and visits to local theaters. For women recovering from the intensity of the social calendar, the salty air was both literal and symbolic relief. And for the most adventurous, or cosmopolitan, there was the continent. The French Riviera became especially fashionable in the late 19th century. Places like Cannes, Nice, and Monte Carlo welcomed English aristocrats and their American wives with open arms. Villas were leased for the season, and the slower pace allowed for both luxury and leisure. The Mediterranean sun offered a different kind of stage. It was less formal, but more glamorous. Dinners stretched into the evening. Excursions along the coast took place in open carriages, and reputations were both maintained and made. Even here, the work of social maintenance continued. Letters were written, invitations accepted or declined, appearances carefully planned. Whether surrounded by pines or palms, a gilded heiress was truly never off duty. We often think of summer as a time to unwind. But for Britain's gilded heiresses, it was something far more demanding. It was a social marathon laced with expectation. Every event, every gown, every seating arrangement was part of a carefully calibrated system. A single season could make or unmake a reputation. And yet, within this structure, women found moments of joy, of friendship, of unexpected power. Whether they were hosting in Hampshire, gliding through Ascot, or dancing beneath the stars in Deauville, they were not simply accessories to their husbands' estates. They were the architects of summer society. Thank you for joining me on the Gilded Heiresses. I'm Julie Montague. See you again soon.